Alrighty. Hello, everyone on Zoom and on YouTube. We are here with Jaquira Diaz, who is the author of This is the Only Kingdom, which was our March fiction pick. And this is your second time here. So I'm sure people already know who you are, but I'm going to give a little re-intro. Jaquira Diaz is a fiction writer, essayist, journalist, cultural critic, and professor from Puerto Rico. She is the author of Ordinary Girls, which was the first book of yours that you published and the first book of yours that we read. And that book received a Whiting Award in Nonfiction, a Florida Book Awards Gold Medal, as well as a Lambda Literary Award finalist nomination, and a Barnes& Noble Discover Prize finalist nomination. Her second book and Sapph-Lit's March book pick, This is the Only Kingdom, was published in October 2025 with Algonquin. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
I know. For like background, I was supposed to interview you at Books Are Magic back in October, but I was like knocked out cold with COVID and sent like a very apologetic email to your lovely publicist. And I watched the interview that happened. You had such great conversation partners, but I've had my questions like ready to ask you for months. So I'm so excited. But congrats on your first fiction book. This is so exciting and what an epic book you wrote. I'd love to hear about how this book came to be. Take us back to that seed of inspiration and how these characters in that story came to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So this is the only kingdom started with a story that was passed down to me. It was about a real person, which one of the characters in the novel is based on. When I was little, I actually was road tripping with my dad, and this song came on the radio, and my dad asked, "Oh, do you know the story behind the song?" And I had no idea what he was talking about. And then he told me the story. The song was about a man who was killed by police, who was a kind of Robin Hood of sorts, who was like a modern day Robin Hood, who was despised by the police but beloved by his community, because he used to like steal from the rich and give to his community. Like he would show up with baby formula and diapers, and he would spread the loot among people he knew. And so even though the police were looking for him, he was protected by the community. And I thought at the time that this was fascinating, that a person actually really existed who was kind of like a Robin Hood. And the more I learned about Ray, the more I realized that I wanted to write about him. Not just because of that contradiction, but also because he had such a complicated story. Um, he was also one of my father's good friends who was supposed to be my godfather. And if he hadn't died when he was young, he would have been. And he gifted me my first pair of gold hoops. And when I started writing this book, I thought I was writing nonfiction, and
Mm.
then it was a book about Ray. And then realized that I needed like 20 years, a lot of research, a lot of interviews to actually write a nonfiction book that would do him justice. And so what I did was, rather than make this book about Ray, I made a fictional family and a community that was a fictional version of where I was born in Puerto Rico. And instead decided to focus on the women.
Mm.
So he's a fictional character. He's not like the real person. They only have that in common. And so the story focuses more on um his wife and her daughter. And really it's kind of like passing the baton from one character to the next. And it takes us to our main character, who is Nina, who is a teenage lesbian who is struggling. She and her mother are struggling with the aftermath of a murder in the family, and they're trying to figure out how to live and how to move past it and how to survive. But she's also a queer girl who is madly in love with her best friend, who who has to endure a terrible betrayal. And all she wants in life is love and to be loved. And then by the end of the novel, I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's kind of she gets some of the things she wants.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about the ending here. Like, everyone who will watch this will have already read the book, so
Okay.
we can absolutely drop some spoilers and spoiler alert for anyone watching in the future. Um, but this being your fiction debut, I'm really interested in like how your writing process and the publishing process even differed from that of Ordinary Girls. And like, was there any tension there for you? Like any new learnings? Like what was that like?
So the writing process itself is so different for me when I'm writing fiction compared to nonfiction. When I'm working on nonfiction, I feel such a sense of responsibility to the
Yeah.
real people that I'm writing about, to the real communities. And it's definitely a responsibility to the truth, but also it's not just the truth. It's like, yes, I have to be truthful, but also I have to be fair. So I feel like I'm interested in the truth. I'm interested in fairness. I'm interested in justice. And I'm thinking about even when I'm writing memoir, I'm thinking about the people I'm writing about and trying to think about ethics. So I spend a lot of time thinking about how do I write something that is not just truthful, but also fair. And nonfiction becomes kind of like a real job with a lot of heavy lifting. And then when I'm writing fiction, I feel like I have a lot more freedom. Like even if the story I'm working on has a lot of trauma, and even if I'm wrestling with something like the truth, which also happens in fiction, I still feel like okay, I don't have so much on my shoulders. I can actually play. I can be more playful.
Yeah.
And so writing this book, even though there are a lot of dark themes and there's a lot of sadness in the book. There's also some joy, but even though there's a lot of sadness, it felt like I could be playful. Like I could change, make a composite character, kill off a character, do whatever I wanted in the interest of the story. And it was okay.
Yeah.
That felt like playing rather than having this huge sense of responsibility.
I think that's so interesting. Like you're even though the story is, really quite heavy and there's absolutely that joy in there, that queer joy. Um, but you do have a responsibility to the characters still, but you can manipulate them into what you want them to be versus,
Yes.
yeah, I love that. So this was something I didn't realize until reading half of the book is that each chapter is titled after a salsa song. And
Yes.
it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure that out because I do not speak Spanish. And so I'm Googling a lot, I'm Google translating a lot, which is a joy to do. And I Googled one of the chapter titles and a salsa song came up and I was like, wait a minute. And then I went to the back of the book and I was like, oh, got it, got it. But after that, it added so much texture to the reading experience. And it's literally like a little built-in playlist for the book. So I'd love to hear about your relationship to salsa music and why you chose this method of chapter organization.
Oh, thank you for that question. This is one of the ways that I felt like as a fiction writer that I could play, that I could be playful. And part of it is that this started, how I got the story, like Ray's story passed on to me was through a song, right? It first emerged in the song and I wanted the book to have something about that in it. So I wanted there to be like tonally, thematically, I wanted the readers to somehow experience the story thinking about music or with some background music or a playlist. While I was writing there, I had a playlist that I was listening to, and then I started to realize it felt like I was writing an album rather than a novel because
Mm,
I was listening to so much music and I was kind of the music was influencing what I was writing. um Rhythmically, I felt like, oh, this is a slow song, then the writing feels like it's slow and sensual, and then when we move on to the next chapter, if it's a fast song, then the writing felt a little bit more energetic. And then thematically, what's happening in the songs is kind of related to what's happening in the
yeah.
chapter. Yeah, so I thought maybe this can be a way to teach readers who are not necessarily part of my community, who don't know anything about salsa, just to enjoy the music. If they have a playlist and they can listen to it as they're reading. So it feels
Yeah.
like the book is very cinematic. So it feels like as you're reading the story, kind of like there's not just a soundtrack, but there's something happening to kind of affect the mood
I
and the
love
tone of the reading.
and
Um,
I'm just going through my I annotate so much in my book. And one of the salsa songs translates literally to "You Burn Me," which I actually have
Yes.
tattooed on my body because it's a Sappho fragment. And I thought
Yes.
that, I don't know if you did that intentionally, or I just thought that was really cool. And then there
You're
was,
the only person who has caught that. I love it.
yes, oh my God, I'm like, I win. But there was another one that was Nate about a trans woman. And I just went down like a Wikipedia hole about her. So I loved that. And I mean, if you haven't already, like make that a Spotify playlist, like make circulate that because I will be listening to it. Um, that's amazing. And, from the beginning, so much of the conditions of the working class barrio setting were contextualized through American imperialism and colonization. You talk about the American factories that affected the environment and the drinking water, the forced migrations to the caseríos, and also please correct my pronunciation at any time. Um,
It's a caserío.
Caserío, thank you.
Yes.
In favor of like these hotels for tourists. And so a lot of my best friends are from San Juan, and I've been lucky enough to have gone there several times. And the Caribe Hilton, the whole lore
Yes.
with that and cutting off the beach to the public, we talked for hours about that. But there's also, forced sterilization and, birth control testing on these, Puerto Rican women. It's just, you tie in so many things that, explain the present conditions and the distrust of the government, the American government, of the police. And you make a very clear point that this is all connected, it's all deliberate. And I'm wondering what you want readers who are not as familiar with the history of Puerto Rico to get out of this story, besides those kind of like hard-hitting facts and being like, this is the truth. See how it's affecting people. Is there like, something more that you want people to like consider with that?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. I when I first started writing this novel, I knew that I wanted to include a little bit of Puerto Rican history. I'm always thinking about history, whether I'm writing fiction or nonfiction. And I wanted to have readers become immersed in the world of the novel and learn something
Yeah.
without feeling like they're being lectured. So it was really important for readers to still feel like they're following a story. It's page turning and propulsive, and at the same time they're learning a lot of history, and so it was really important for me to ensure that they understood that it was all connected and that all of the characters are affected by all of this history, whether they know it or not, implicitly or explicitly. Every single character's actions is in some way connected to colonialism, to the Puerto Rican housing project, which was a colonial project, and any instances of racism or homophobia are also parts of the system, that they're all interconnected. And so I wanted to suggest we're all affected by these systems, right? Whether you're a Black person in Puerto Rico or a white person, racism affects everyone. Whether you're a queer person or not, homophobia affects everyone. It affects us all. And it's something that destroys communities, even within communities that have been very supportive and loving. And that's part of what I wanted to show, that all of these systemic failures, systemic kinds of oppression affect us all, and they have potentially ruptured communities and have the capacity of, it's possible for them to also rupture families. And so I wanted readers to walk away feeling like they had learned something without being lectured to.
Yeah.
Most importantly, as we're thinking about the world right now and our own political climate in the US and the US relationship to Puerto Rico, I wanted readers to understand a little bit about how the Puerto Rican people have been. They say that there's a debate between whether Puerto Ricans want stateship or independence, but I wanted them to understand a little bit about why that is never resolved, why that has not been resolved for decades, for so long. It's not because the Puerto Rican people are confused. Absolutely not. It's because there have been so many interconnected systems that have potentially silenced people who wanted
Mm.
independence, have um, been built to promise people better lives, and even as they're being stripped of resources, right? So I wanted readers to understand a little bit about all of these conditions and how this is not like separate from racism or homophobia. Like all of these systemic oppressions are interconnected and they're here by design.
Yeah.
Um, and so I also wanted to suggest I would love readers to walk away feeling like through these character stories, there is an understanding that even during the darkest moments, what what carries Nina, for example, or what carries Mari Carmen is community, right? It's finding love and finding family, even within people who are not necessarily related to them by blood. When Nina finds love, for example, even though she's struggling with all of these things, some of which are horrific, when Nina finds love and community, she's lifted up and she feels like I can survive and thrive. Like I can be the person I always dreamed of being because I have people on my side and they love me no matter what. So I wanted to suggest that even in the darkest times, community and people who love you are what matter. That's what matters.
I love that. Yeah, and you speaking of the silencing of voices for Puerto Rican independence reminded me the last time I was in Puerto Rico, I my friend Kike was like works for the Bank of Puerto Rico and was giving us a tour around Vio San Juan. Um, and we were walking by this restaurant that we had been to the night before, and he pointed out the house and he was like, "Yeah, the this was like shot up with machine guns and they, you know, kidnapped and murdered the leader of the Puerto Rican independence like movement and he was kept in these dungeons underground and like experimented on with like radiation. They called him like the king of towels because
Yes.
he like wrapped towels around his head to try and protect himself. And I was like, that we had dinner there last night. I had no idea. And I mean, even the streets of Puerto Rico with the blue iron cobblestones and it's still there, so visible, but like there's like a glossy coating over it almost. And I feel like your story really like peeled that back. And there's so much Spanish integrated into the dialogue and prose here, of course. But unlike most books that have non-English words, they're not italicized. They're not like called out. They're just naturally, simply a part of the sentence. How does your bilingual brain translate to the page? Is it seamless, or are you conscious when you're, actively using Spanish phrases? Explain that to me.
Yes. Oh my goodness, this is such a great question. I think in both languages depending on what I'm thinking about, and
Mm.
I dream also bilingually
Yeah.
depending on what I'm dreaming about. I tend to when I'm thinking about home and things that are domestic and family, I tend to think in Spanish and speak in Spanish. And like at home, my dad and I speak Spanish. My family members and I speak Spanish. My friends who are from Miami, and I speak Spanglish to each other. And so for me, it feels like depending on where I am in the world, in my head, if that's the language I use. So I don't necessarily think of them as separate languages by this point. By this point, I'm like, this is just how I speak. And there are a lot of people in Puerto Rico who do the same, who are moving between English and Spanish. There are some words in Puerto Rican Spanish that come from English.
Mm.
Like rather than like, for example, the word closet, like coming out of the closet, rather than saying having a separate word for closet in like other Spanish speaking countries like tropero, we say closet. And so moving between English and Spanish feels in some ways like you're navigating something, but also I feel like for Puerto Rican speaking and moving between languages is kind of like art.
Yeah.
And so I wanted there in the novel not to be some kind of language hierarchy. I wanted it to feel like this movement between languages, between words. People who are Puerto Rican understand this, and
Yeah.
it is artful. It's like a way that we have made language the way no other country
Yeah.
has. Like when you go to Puerto Rico and you're speaking to Puerto Rican people, you understand. Wait a minute. This is a different kind of Spanish. This is a different Spanish. No one else in the world speaks Spanish like this. And so I wanted the novel, the atmosphere, the world to feel just authentic, authentically Puerto Rican, and so that a reader who doesn't speak Spanish, for example, Yes, maybe they'll have to Google, but by the end of the book, I feel like the book has taught you how to read it. The book, you've been immersed in the novel, and by the end of it, you get so much context that you don't necessarily need a dictionary. And I mean, when I read books, part of the thing that I read for is to learn. Like I want my world to expand, and so I want readers to go on this journey and feel like by the end of the novel, there's something expansive that they've experienced. They've learned a lot about history, about language, about music, and they've also been living with these characters for a while.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, that was definitely my experience in reading the book. Um, and as I was looking over my annotations to prep for our chat, there was like three separate sections where I wrote, "This is so Les Miserables coded." I wrote that next to a paragraph of Mary Carmen talking about raising Nena and Tito without Ray. And I was like, oh my God, I Dreamed a Dream is so Mary Carmen's song. And she got fired from the factory just like Fontaine. And Ray is so Valjean coded being on the run. And Altieri is totally Javert. And I like, there were seriously like three or four separate times where I was like, this reminds me of Les Mis. Granted, I'm bilingual in French and I was raised on Les Mis, so maybe I'm bringing that context to this book, but like, am I crazy? Do you see that a little bit?
You're not crazy. You're absolutely not crazy. There were three texts that everyone, I guess, thinks of as classics that I've been thinking about for a long time, that I was thinking about at different points during while I was writing the novel. One of them was definitely Les Miserables. The other one was Antigone. And then the third was Robin Hood.
Oh my God, I
So
love that.
there is, I think, a way that this book is in conversation with those three texts. And I wanted it to feel like it was like a queering of
Yeah.
Antigone or Les Miserables or Robin Hood, so that there, I think readers will see moments that resonate and they're like, oh, this is such an Antigone moment, or oh, this is such a Robin Hood moment. Um, that for me, like that is why literature is feels like more than just
Yeah.
something you do for school, right? There's so many ways that you can play in fiction. This is one of them, for me, I think it adds layers of meaning. But one of the most important things that I wanted this to do for readers is to show how a Puerto Rican story is a universal story, right? How we are all connected in some way. That if you see hints of Les Miserables or Robin Hood or Antigone, it's because we're all kind of affected in similar ways by things like poverty or things like homophobia or anti-Black racism. And um, I wanted to show that a very, very specific story with very particular details is not just a story, right, just for my community, that there are lots of different potential audiences. And there are ways that all of our work is in conversation.
I love that. And I loved your Antigone epitaph in the beginning. Um, like you saying those three classics are the inspiration. Those are like literally my f three favorite classics. I have seen every Robin Hood adaptation, read it, like watched it all growing up. And then Antigone, I thought growing up was a French story because I read it in French as Antigone.
Mm.
And, and then I got to college, saw the play, read it in English, and I was like, oh, that's not how you pronounce it. Oopsies. But no, I love that so much. And like, of course, the other kind of like classic, shall we say, um, that, saw some things in here that reminded me of growing up very religious was the Bible.
Yeah.
And seeing like there are lots of parallels I see between Ray El Cantante and Jesus Christ and Juanito being kind of like his Judas. I mean, Ray's name literally means king. Um, any other kind of thoughts around that?
Oh my goodness. Excuse me. You're the first person who's actually said that there is a connection
Yeah,
in that way. I mean, the Catholic Church figures heavily in the book and
absolutely.
thematically. Particularly, one of the things that I wanted to suggest was how the Catholic Church was not just for Puerto Ricans, it was not just a spiritual place that we went to. There are Catholic churches in every single city and town in Puerto Rico. They're at the center, like the actual center of every single town and downtown is a Catholic church. And so I wanted to suggest how this is not just a spiritual place, it's a system of power.
Yeah.
And it's a system of power and oppression. For some Puerto Ricans, it's a place of community, but for some, like during the time of the 70s and 90s, when historically when the book takes place, for queer men who were experiencing HIV/AIDS who wanted to be buried, the Catholic Church refused to bury them or give them Catholic funerals, even if they had been baptized, even if they were Catholic, even if their families were Catholic, even if they had participated in the community. And so I wanted to suggest how this place was so there were so many contradictions, just like in the characters, there were so many contradictions. Characters have the capacity of being incredibly compassionate or terribly cruel. And I wanted to show that that was also the Catholic Church. And so this is also interconnected. Um, and I deliberately wanted to suggest that Rey's character, obviously the name Rey means king, but as I was writing, I was like, I don't know if all readers would necessarily get this. And so I wrote it into the book thinking that if it's a thing that Nina realizes
Mm.
somewhere in the story, because she's so young when she realizes it, that it won't feel that heavy-handed for a reader. So it's Nina who makes that connection first.
Wow.
And I almost wanted her to suggest something about her father's story feeling like it was similar to Jesus' story, but I didn't go that far. I thought, oh no, I think readers have
I don't
to.
think you needed to. I mean, for
Okay,
me, who went I went to church 3 times a week and I mean I picked up on it. No, and I mean being like deconstructing my religion now, I consider myself an atheist and I like retrospectively see how much of, church messaging, though there was so much community,
Mhm.
there was so much detrimental messaging around queerness. And I see that in Nena's story with her best friend Genesis so much. I mean, her name's Genesis, like Jesus.
Yeah.
Like the nascence of her queerness is through her best friend Genesis. Gaggy. That was great. Um, anyways, I mean, I also want to talk about Tito and Mr. Peña's relationship. And as a reader, also for people watching in the future, spoiler alerts coming. As a reader, the red flags about this man, well, from
Yes.
the beginning, they were everywhere. And Tito sees them too. He just, loved the novelty of it, wanted to be adored, felt that he could be himself around Peña. But that doesn't make Peña a good person. And seeing the dissolution of their relationship and then immediately finding out what happens to Tito. And they find him in the sugarcane field. Um, and you realize it's him from that very first chapter. It immediately I was like, Pena did it. He did it. It's obviously him. But then of course we later find out, spoiler alert, it was Genesis's older brother, Jamil and all of his cronies because of like the AIDS crisis fueled homophobia of it all. Did you want readers to suspect Pena?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I did. I did. I tried very hard to give clues that were pointing at Jamil and also Peña
Mm,
and also the man that he meets in Club
yeah.
Eros at the bar. So
On
I was
house,
like,
I think.
Angel, yes.
Yeah.
So I tried very hard to like give clues that pointed toward each of them so that readers wouldn't know who it was until the very end.
Mm.
Um, but I also wanted to suggest something that there was something sinister about Peña, who was his basketball coach, who was a high school teacher, who deliberately waited for Tito to turn 18, like started a relationship and then waited for him to turn 18 to immediately start a relationship. And there was such a disbalance of power. I wanted readers to understand that he was predatory and that just because Tito was 18 when they had this relationship, that did not make him not a pedophile, right?
Yeah.
um and so I wanted to suggest all of these things that were happening with Peña. He had all of these ulterior motives, all of these ways that he behaved like in a really sinister way. And then with Tito, his behavior was like kind of the opposite. Like for Tito, Tito felt like, oh, I had this violent moment and this man came and saved me. And he was
Yeah.
very good to me and he brought me gifts and he made me feel seen and he told me I was beautiful. And I wanted to suggest that this character is capable, like I said, of both good and evil, not just one or the other, that we're all very complicated and that his character is very complicated. Um, I did want readers to feel like when they find out that it was actually Jamil, Genesis's older brother, that they were surprised that it was him. I kind of was suggesting that Jamil's character and the brothers, like all the brothers, were just like acting like in a way that was often dismissed by people in the community as, oh, boys will be boys. That's what boys do.
Yeah.
Um, and I also wanted to suggest like this attitude of boys will be boys, that's just what boys do, is actually really dangerous. Like it's feeding something that's really dangerous. And then when I wrote the scenes that included Angel, and Tito had this moment in the bar where he's having a conversation with Angel, where they're very attracted to each other, where they're having a great time. They dance, they kiss. There were moments in the conversation that also were meant to feel kind of sinister. When that were meant to give clues about like this person also potentially could be dangerous, but we don't know. Or could he be or couldn't he? We don't necessarily know because we just see him for a very short time. And there are moments when we're Tito's point of view where we see him walking through the cane fields and we understand that he's there to meet Angel, that
Yeah.
there's a little bit of doubt whether or not Angel did it. And then
Yeah.
we're like, oh, Angel is meeting Angel, of course. So I spent a lot of time trying to balance those things out, like trying to um kind of insert red herrings, if you will.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not a mystery writer. So this part for me was a lot of fun. It felt like, oh, this is like kind of like a puzzle that readers have to solve.
I loved it. I mean, I also was surprised when we found out that Jamil and his friends did it. But then I was like, of course they did. Those mother like I was immediately like I don't want to say satisfied because that sounds so morbid, but I was like, this makes sense. And I also like there's absolutely some tension there that Altieri is the one investigating this crime.
Yes.
Talk to me about like that character. I found him very Javert coded, obviously. Or not, yeah, Javert. Um, and I mean, Mary Carmen is immediately like, get the fuck out of my house. I don't want to
Yeah.
see you. I don't want to talk to you. But he's the one who figured it out, I guess. So tell me about him as a character in that creation.
Yeah. So um his character was actually, when I first started writing him, he was based on a real person
Mm.
who was part of the real life Ray story. Ray, when he was alive, he like as I said, he was wanted by the police, and people in the community would hide him. They would, like my grandmother, for example, she would feed him, and then he would go on his way, and then somebody else in the neighborhood would say, "You could stay here for tonight." So everybody was protecting him, and there was this police officer who had a personal vendetta against him. Where everybody said, when we saw him coming, we were all scared because we knew that he wanted Ray so badly that he would do anything to get him. So everyone was afraid of this guy. And he essentially was the one who killed him in real life. And so I wanted this story in some ways to be part of the novel, even though it's not the real story. There, like I changed a lot about what happens, how it happens in the novel. But when I created the fictional character, I thought he needs a motivation. He can't just show up and just be like a terrible person for no reason. And so part of what became very obvious is that in this community, there's a kind of surveillance happening. All the people who live in El Caserío, most of them are black and brown. They're all living in poverty, and they're being surveilled by the police all the time. Even their moments of joy, like they live under surveillance. Even when they're celebrating a baptism or a birthday, the police are there surveilling them. So they are there to control. And so it felt like I needed to show readers why, like what his motivation was. So there's that culture of surveillance and people with, the police having all this power. But then when I have the scene where when Rey meets Altieri for the first time, there's a moment when Cano, who is like a bystander,
Yeah.
he's one of Rey's friends, when he notices that Altieri, who is a white police officer, sees Mari Carmen, who is a white teenager, a white 16-year-old, and she's standing in a group of all Black boys. And to him, that reads as danger. And immediately he acts in a racist way. He thinks, I have to protect this white girl, and he hits Rey. To him, just they being present was considered dangerous. So immediately I wanted to show that his motivation is clearly he's racist and he thinks he's protecting Mari Carmen, and he enacts this violence because he thinks he's protecting her. And to him, he feels like he's right. He's pursuing justice. He is protecting, serving and protecting. And to the boys and to Rey, he's a villain. He's a terrible villain who is targeting Rey, who's also a teenage boy. And so when I created his character, I thought I need him to feel like he is doing the right thing, like he's a hotshot cop who's protecting people, and he walks like his shit don't stink. He walks around that way.
Yeah.
And so that's how I wrote him. He shows up to a poker game and he feels like, oh, I'm among these peasants. I'm definitely gonna win this game. And he every single one of his actions it's meant to show that this guy thinks he's hot shit. This
Yeah.
guy thinks he is like people need to fear him. And so while writing his character, I was very aware that he felt like a villain, and I didn't want there to be any villains in the novel. I didn't want there any of the characters to feel like they were just one thing. But then I thought, I feel like this character is so terrible. There's no redemption for him. And so I didn't want to give him any like redeeming qualities. So when I was creating him, I thought his his only redeeming quality is that he's a human being, right? He's walking around and he's human and he has the capacity for good. He
Mhm.
does. He just hasn't acted that way at all.
Ever.
Ever. Yeah. And so I want readers to understand also that he's not just a terrible guy, not just a villain, that he's actually enacting things that were also deliberate, right? Like
Yeah.
these systems were created deliberately to oppress people for a reason. This is all connected to colonialism and American imperialism. And I mean, the police were created because they wanted them to surveil and target Black people.
Yeah.
This is like
And
the creation of the police.
original slave catchers, literally.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So they were terrorizing people who were enslaved, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted him to represent all of this history. So Altieri's character, this is who he is. He represents not just his own character, but all of this history that is alive and well because we feel the effects of it to
Yeah.
this day.
Yeah. Woof. I was in the end, I was still so angry that he was there, that he still like showed up and like technically like did his job because you're right. Like the only reason he has an ego is because he is a white man in a position of power, able to stand above the black and brown people he's surveying.
Yeah.
Um, ugh, you did a really good job writing a really unlikable character. Like I say that so complimentary.
Thank you. I
Um,
love unlikable characters.
oh, me too. Um, okay, let's talk about Nena. She, I like one of my favorite characters I've ever read. Like genuinely, I cried so much in the last like 50 pages of this book. I absolutely adored her and I am so proud of her. Like I felt so connected to her. And she grew up with so much loss and harm. Her father, Tito, Genesis is a huge loss, huge betrayal. Um, and we see her, be completely displaced, like pretty much involved, like not on her own volition whatsoever, like being picked up and placed in Miami. Um, and, dealing with the abuse from her grandmother, the carelessness of her aunt. It just like girl was going through it. But then she begins working at this pharmacy in Miami during the peak of the AIDS crisis, filling AZT prescriptions, and it's through that experience that she flips her response to loss from turning towards like self-isolation, and instead like opening up for love. And she realized that n no matter how long these people were in her life, they were a gift. And it's through that reframing these experiences, surrounded by all of this death and loss, that she begins her own life. And she finds her chosen family. She's finally surrounded with Black people who look like her, queer people who think and love like her. And I just adore her. I just have to say that she's so wonderful. And I have to know, like, as someone who cares about Nina, like, where do you think her story goes after the last page? Do you have an imagined future for her?
I do. Oh my goodness, thank you for that question. I do. I've been thinking about this a lot. Um, One of the things that I wanted to show about Nina is that she is so driven that
Mm.
all of her relationships have taught her something, even when they were like a betrayal.
Yeah.
She is so driven, and she has become a person who is determined not just to survive, but to thrive and to take care of other people.
Yeah.
She is so driven. She becomes a person who is like, I am going to take care of my mom. Even if she didn't take care of me, so she's like, I'm gonna take care of my friends. So she loves hard. And because she suffered this terrible betrayal early on in her story, I wanted her to have a happy ending. I wanted her to have like a reconciliation with her mom. And also, I wanted her to have love, like a love that was uplifting and that made her feel like she didn't have to prove herself. She didn't have to hide. She didn't have to be closeted. And so I envision her living back in Puerto Rico with her mom. And I think she took Claudia with her, and they're very happy, thriving, enjoying each other, having a lot of fun. And I also think that Mari Carmen loves and adores both of them. Like the three of them are living happily in Puerto Rico. I have been thinking about, should I write a second book that is focused on this relationship?
Please, please. I would love that. I mean, I love that. I love that so, so, so much. And I mean, yes, I think you should absolutely write a second book. Like, see what their life in Miami looks like when she's going through rehab and seeing the doctors, like flashback to that, and then modern day Puerto Rico and like living their lives. Oh my God. When she met Claudia and like she I think she was like eating a donut or like offering her a donut or something, and she was like talking about like how she was just so comfortable in her body, and I was like, yes, the way that queerness has like healed so much of body image issues for me, because like seeing, attraction towards another woman and like looking at my body through like a queer woman's eyes. Oh my God, I think you should do it. I support it. Um, anyways, enough of that. The inspiration behind the title and the cover is revealed on page 204, where Nena is standing in the cemetery and a red-tailed hawk flies through the sky, and she says, Hell wasn't real and heaven was no kingdom. This is the only kingdom. Everything else was a lie. And I really interpreted that as queer joy, queer community, chosen family. That is the only kingdom. What does it mean for you? What is your kingdom?
Oh, thank you. That I've been thinking about this a lot because that moment is open to interpretation. I think certain readers will read that as she's talking about the here and now,
Mm,
the living. And for me, that's partially true. Um, but I
yeah.
think love, uh, queer love certainly, but also love, like loving your people and your people loving you back. For me feels like the only kingdom, the only thing that matters.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Is there a reaction from a reader that has stood out to you for this book?
Um, yes, I remember having a conversation with Caro de Robertis, who wrote The Palace of Arrows, a
Yes.
sapphic, very sapphic, sexy book.
Love it.
Um, and they were talking about how they had moments when they noticed like and the connections with Antigone. And we had a conversation about how Mari Carmen trying to have Tito buried and having the Catholic Church like deny her and saying that they would not perform this Catholic mass was such a painful moment that resonated with them. Um, and then I started talking about Antigone and why I wanted to make that connection. But part of what that leads to is the conversation about um, the moment in Miami in the pharmacy and having Nina, who was a teenager, um, living through the HIV/AIDS epidemic and losing so many people one after the other, and so much so that it became such a loss in the queer community, that it was almost like an entire generation. And when Caro was talking about reading these moments, it was a very emotional conversation. And Caro was like, "How did you write this? How did you have so much insight into this?" And so that reaction felt for me like so emotional. I never thought that I would admit this out loud, but the truth is I lived that. I was a teenager who worked in a pharmacy, who was experiencing the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And I was closeted and I didn't really understand how one comes out. I just saw all of these queer people living openly and building community and being so full of joy that was kind of a moments for me that were like moments of awareness, like actually you could live openly queer and have joy and have community and have friends and have people who love you and have a partner. um and when I started talking about this, Garo had tears in their eyes and made me I was like, oh no, I'm getting so tearful, we're having this public conversation. But I guess part of what it was like being seen and understood and having the work be so seen and understood, made me feel like I want to tell you all of these secrets.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing that with me. That is, I mean, reading Ordinary Girls and then which is just such an incredible piece of work like on its own, but knowing what I know of you through that book and then reading This is the Only Kingdom, I do see parallels between you and Nena
Mm,
and it just she was so real and so that moment of even in the face of loss and like being so scared for what would happen to her loved ones in the future, like she knew that like she would be happier being out and like taking that risk. It just I love that. And I want to see if that conversation, it was a like a public like book conversation. I'm like, was it
it
recorded? I want to
was.
watch it.
It was not recorded. It was not
Well,
recorded.
and I respect that. So tell me what is next? What are you working on? What are you excited about?
So I am working on book three, which is a nonfiction book. I've drafted um kind of an outline for another memoir, which will be book four. I drafted the outline I'm like, I need to take a little bit of time away from
Yeah.
that. But book three and book four are both nonfiction books that will be kind of like sequels to Ordinary Girls, to my first book. So they're related, connected to that first book. But book three is a memoir in essays that is exploring ideas of home. And part of it is takes place when I was a teenager in Miami, and a big chunk of it is returning to Puerto Rico as an adult, and finding love and getting engaged. um, but it's about belonging and a lot of other things like place and climate change and queerness. Both of these books that I've been working on um, came about because as I was touring Ordinary Girls and having conversations with readers kept asking, why didn't you write more about your queerness? Why didn't you write more about your time in the military? And I thought I had all of this material, all of this that I wanted to say about my queerness, but it felt like it belonged in a whole other book. I felt
Yeah.
like if I opened this up, it's a whole other book. So I wanted Ordinary Girls to be about growing up and coming of age. So book three is all about this, and then book four will be about my time in the military.
Wow, I am very excited for both of those projects. I cannot wait to hear more when you talk more about them. Okay, rapid fire round, and
Okay.
anyone listening, if you have any questions for Jaquira, drop them in the chat. All right, what are you currently reading?
I just started reading Takira Madden's Would-Be. Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. It's on my shelf. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, she's such an incredible writer. I mean, I'm not gonna give you any spoilers, but it is, yeah, stunning.
Amazing. Is there a book that you recommend everyone to read? Like if you haven't read this, stop everything you're doing and start this right now.
Yes, definitely. Caro de Roberti's So Many Stars, which is uh oral history of trans, queer, and two-spirit and genderqueer BIPOC people of color. Yes, everybody needs to read So Many Stars.
I have that on my shelf. I think I was sent it by the publisher, bumping it up the TBR
Yeah.
immediately. Is there a book coming out soon that you're excited to read?
I not so rapid fire, but I have no idea. I have been catching up on my TBR
Yeah.
list and just reading and rereading actually because I just reread all of Toni Morrison's novels. So I haven't even looked at what's being published, except for Takira Madden's Would Be. So I guess that is going to be
Yeah,
my
fair.
response to that question. Yeah.
So you reread all of Toni Morrison's novels like back to back?
Yes. Over last
Wow.
summer, that's what I spent most of the summer doing. I rereading Toni Morrison.
What was that
Yeah.
experience like?
It was illuminating. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. And I realized that her books are so layered with meaning that I have to reread them again and again. That rereading them once is not enough. I have to return to them again. Maybe I'll pick up one or two again this summer because there's so much, so many layers. I feel like um, every time I read them, I I remember something or I catch something or like I was finding layers of meaning. I was like, oh, I'm like a scholar right here, taking so many notes. What happened? I didn't see this the first time I read this. She was such an amazing writer, such an amazing writer. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite of hers? Like if you had to choose one?
Beloved is my favorite. I think
Yeah,
a lot of
same.
people say Song of Solomon, but
Oh,
Beloved is my favorite.
yeah, I would say Beloved is my favorite too. Are you an annotator? Like, do you write directly in?
Yeah.
Okay, me too. Cool. Okay, favorite moment from the Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show.
Yes, Ricky Martin.
Oh,
Absolutely. I when I saw Ricky Martin, I thought, oh my God. First, he is so beautiful.
he's stunning.
I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely a lesbian, but that is a beautiful man.
That is a beautiful gay man.
Yes, yes.
No, literally Tia's everywhere, like collectively screaming like it was heard from mi for miles. I
I
love
was
it.
one of those Theas, definitely.
Amazing. If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be? And it can also be a dinner party. So you can have people in conversation with one another, or you can talk to just one.
Oh,
Whatever
oh.
you want to take this question.
Oh my goodness. So I would definitely have a dinner party with Toni Morrison,
Yep.
Julia de Burgos, Juan Antonio Correger, Pedro Albizu Campos, Audre Lorde, and James Baldwin.
It's writers and intellectuals galore. No, that is the best dinner
Yes.
party. Like you can't drink too much at that dinner party because you have to remember what they say.
Yeah, that's true. And then afterwards they'll be dancing.
Oh yeah, salsa on the stereo. Favorite queer movie or TV show that you've watched recently?
So it wasn't that recently, but Vida is my favorite queer TV show. I was so heartbroken when the show was canceled. I think there were only two or three seasons. Um, and it is a show I think about a lot. It is also, I feel like you don't have to be a lesbian or queer to enjoy it. It is a beautiful, beautiful show. I love it.
I've never, it's called Vita.
Yes, it was on Stars. And I
Okay,
think
got it.
you can still get it if you have like a streaming service on Stars or like I think it's on Amazon Prime. But it's a story about two sisters who one of which is she's queer and then um the older one is queer, and the older sister has, she left home early, and then their mom dies and she has to return home. And somehow the two sisters have to make their their mom's bar work or it's going under. And it's not just a bar, it's like the center of a community, of a queer community. And so it's a lot about community, it's about sisterhood and queer love, and gentrification and all of these things that are interconnected. And there are a lot of beautiful, beautiful sapphic people in it. So
I
yeah,
mean,
everybody should watch it.
that's why that's why most people would watch
Yeah,
it. No, the hearing about so many, like I ask this question to every interviewer or person I interview, and the amount of people that say, "Oh, I love this show, but it got canceled," like
yeah,
League of Her Own,
I love that too.
The Wilds, like so many
Yes,
like sapphic TV shows just ousted
yeah,
from programming. And now I don't know if you saw all the hoopla with season 5 of Bridgerton coming out, but
yes,
the amount of lesbophobia, homophobia, motherfuckers coming out of the woodworks being like, I I was like, people need to fucking touch grass
yeah,
and leave us alone.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I often struggle with enjoying, like, starting a show, a
Yeah, me
sapphic show
too.
or a lesbian show, because I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be canceled
Yeah.
because people are terrible. It's gonna be canceled. And then I wait until it's like season 2. I'm like, okay, I'll start watching it now. I'm gonna make an investment.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, watching season 1 and then it ends on like some sort of cliffhanger or something, and it's like, oh, well, I'll just never find out what happens.
Yeah. A League of Her Own,
Yeah, The
which is
Wilds.
such a great show. Yeah.
Oh, they were both so good. Okay, lastly, favorite queer person to follow on social media, favorite queer celebrity, like anyone that you're like obsessed with this person.
Oh, should I say this out loud? Okay.
Like, who is it?
So, um, oh no, now I'm on the spot. So I follow a lot of queer people on social media for various reasons.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say Paola Ramos, who is a journalist. I follow her for journalistic reasons, not just because she's beautiful. Um, but she's a really, really smart, articulate journalist, and thinker. And so follow her for her content because she is talking about, our political climate, um Latin America, our history, the US relationship with Latin America.
She's
She
beautiful.
Yeah, and that.
But yes, all of those other amazing things that you said, I'm sure are correct. But I literally have never heard of this person, and I Googled Paula Ramos. Wow.
Yes, she's a journalist and she has books. Her I think her latest book came out, I want to say 2 years ago.
Mhm.
So read her books.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for the recommendation. Well, thank you so much for being here. I had like the best time chatting with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for reading This Is the Only Kingdom. I appreciate the conversation so much, and hopefully, I'll be back to talk about book 3.
Oh my God, I will be waiting so patiently. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thank you
Talk
so
soon.
much. Bye.
Bye.